A frog in my throat. Sorry, but hopefully you can hear me. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I am back to work, back at the office today, Thursday, July 10th. I'm looking at the date over there. So last week you had a silent version of Tracking Trends Thursday. You may or may not know I did try like at least 5 times, if not more. On my vacation, I tried, and I don't know why the microphone was not working. So today I'm talking loud because I don't know if it was my microphone, if it was one screen. I don't know what the issue was, but I didn't want to take a chance on the microphone that I was trying last week, this week. So hopefully, again, you can hear me and you can hear what's happening in real estate. As of this Thursday, as of today, July 10th, mortgage rates did tick up after 5 consecutive weeks of going down. So, and when rates did go down for 5 weeks, we did see mortgage applications go up. So that is a thing. That is a trend that we would always see. When interest rates go down, mortgage applications and buyer activity go up. So the fact that they went up this week, means that we might see activity from buyers go down again. So here, 6.72 is the average 30-year fixed interest rate. And that is just a touch up from last week, but actually down by 0.17 from last year, which is why year over year we're seeing more mortgage applications than we did same time last year. We are on the higher end of the range that we've been in for the past year. Interest rates are impacted by national economic news, which is why we look at this. So there was some optimism here in the economy that inflation is expected to be at 3% a year from now, which is down from previous surveys and back to pre-tariff levels. So that is showing a sign of consumer optimism in terms of the economy. However, and then also the jobs data. So those two things there may contribute to optimism about our economy. The jobs data was better than expected. And however, unemployment claims were at their highest level since November of 2021. So a bit of some mixed news there. Not surprising. Again, we're in a time of kind of uncertainty. Things go up, things go down. We're never quite sure which way they're going. So here, purchase mortgage applications, as I mentioned, where it was 9% for the week and 25% higher than the same week last year because of that change in interest rate, as we looked at earlier. And so in terms of buyer activity, so this here is telling us that in 2024, that it was an all-time low of number of people who moved. So all-time low in terms of home purchases. We saw in 2024, 24% below pre-pandemic levels. So that is a concern. That is less buyer activity, and our trend has been increased inventory. So that may then show up in prices, which you can see here. There is perhaps some measure of it showing up in prices. For the Mid-Atlantic region, listings were slightly above last year, buyer activity slightly above last year for our Mid-Atlantic area. However, prices are starting to soften in most markets, and there is a seasonality to the market. I often talk about that. So this time of year, yes, prices do tend to come down. However, in the Washington, D.C. metro area, list prices are down from last year also. So not just down for the season, but also down from last year. So you can see that here. Now, it's not a big number, so it's down 0.7% from last year. So we'll continue to track that. Showings were down 21.5% week over week. That makes sense because we're looking at, this is the 4th of July week. So how did the 4th of July week compare to a non-holiday week? Showings were down, contracts were down, time to contract was longer, listings were down 20%, price was down, active listings down, basically everything down because it was a holiday week in the summer. That makes sense. Compared to last year, showings are up 8% for the larger DC metro area, purchase contracts up 6.6%. Time to contract 6 days longer. That's a lot. 29 days, that's a lot in my career. That's a high number for what I've seen in my 15 years in doing this. Listings are up 10%. We talked about price being down year over year, and active listings up 40%, another big number. Let's look at the hyperlocal area. So in here, we are looking at Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, and Falls Church specifically. That is this data we run up until yesterday. So it is the most current, the most local data that I can share with you. We're looking at number of new listings and number of new contracts. So week over week, we are down from the week before, again, because it's the 4th of July week. So that makes sense. And this is the first time we've seen in a while, actually, this will show up again, that contracts beat out listings last week. So there was more buyer activity than seller activity last week. Days on market increased and interest rates are still relatively flat. Demand to supply ratio. So you can see here over 100% because there were more contracts than listings, which gave us a higher than 100% demand to supply ratio. And week over week, both supply and contracts were down because it was a holiday week. And this is, oh, wait a second, that's year over year. So also week over week and year over year. My apologies. I didn't realize I was looking at year over year because I did know, and it does make sense that week over week, those things are down because of the holiday. This is my year over year data. So yeah, that's down as well, year over year. So that's interesting that we're now comparing a holiday week to a holiday week, although the holiday might have fallen it would have fallen on a different day, but both listings and contracts were down compared to last year. So that is your update for this week. Sorry that you couldn't hear me. You might have tried to interpret yourself last week if you watched the silent video there. But I hope this was helpful. And if you ever want to talk about how things impact you and your decisions, reach out 571-210-1866, call or text me. Email me at kristen@homesteadmason.com or click down below to get on my calendar. Thank you for watching and have a good week.